Donald Trump's former chief financial officer, Allen Weisselberg, pled guilty to multiple counts of felony perjury in connection with the New York Attorney General's civil fraud case based on his deposition testimony as well as his trial testimony. He entered a guilty plea in a Manhattan courthouse earlier in the day. His sentencing will be scheduled for April, and the sentencing recommendation is 5 months incarceration. Trump is days away from the E. Jean Carroll doomsday moment for him, where E. Jean Carroll will seize his assets if he doesn't come up with $83.3 million in a bond. I want to talk about that because then we got to focus on not only Donald Trump's inability to post a bond in the E. Jean Carroll case, but then what about the New York Attorney General civil fraud case and his inability to post a $464 million bond there, which is what the judgment against him is when you include pre and post judgment interest, which increases by like $111,000 every day. That's the same case where his former chief financial officer just pled guilty to felony perjury. Also, Donald Trump lost in the DC Republican primary. It was a closed Republican primary, meaning only Republican voters cast their vote there. Trump lost, of course, to Nikki Haley, and that's as we head into Super Tuesday, or as Donald Trump calls her, Nancy Pelosi. Trump also gave unhinged, cognitively impaired speeches in Virginia and in North Carolina, where, let's just face it, he's not even speaking in sentences anymore. It's just a bunch of kind of garbled, odd nonsense. And when you can try to make out the words, they're all about hating America, supporting Vladimir Putin, and undermining our democracy. Yet the media wants to gaslight us all into pretending that this is somehow normal. Finally, let's talk about the Supreme Court ruling that the 14th Amendment Section 3 does not say what the 14th Amendment Section 3 actually says. The gaslighting is real, folks, and instead what the Supreme Court wants us to believe is that actually the powers that are enumerated there are for Congress to make a determination about whether an insurrectionist, or for that matter anyone, is qualified to become a United States president. This kind of, the implications here are just so utterly dangerous. So what? Someone can basically serve for life as a dictator? I mean, if Congress doesn't pass legislation, the current Congress that's unable to even do basic things because Donald Trump has driven to undermine American policy because he thinks that's a winning issue for them. But folks, it just shows you the stakes of this election in November. We'll talk about that and more. This is the MeidasTouch Podcast. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Brett and Jordy. A day of a lot of news. You know, you're waking up in the morning hearing about this guilty plea by Trump's former CFO, but who was the CFO during all of the relevant time period for these fraud cases, Allen Weisselberg, someone who previously pled guilty and was convicted of tax fraud crimes in connection with the case where the Trump organization was ultimately convicted of tax fraud and about a dozen other felony charges as well. People forget about that. The Trump organization is a felon organization. They were convicted in another criminal trial. Then you heard from the Supreme Court and their horrible decision there. Some interesting stuff we'll discuss also, that the metadata reveals that the justices appointed by the Democrats actually seem to be writing a dissent, but that was changed in the metadata to act like they filed a concurring opinion when it looked like they were trying to file
fascinating.
a dissent. Very fascinating. How are you doing?
I'm good, Ben. You know, states' rights when we like states' rights, and if we don't like it, then screw states' rights, right? Like there's zero
taking away reproductive rights, states' rights. When it comes to taking away people's states' rights,
it's kind of the history though of the country in many ways. You know, when you look back, you always have these steps back in the name of states' rights, and then you hope that enough people come together to put the right people in power where these decisions ultimately get overturned. And that's why it's important that we all have to be in there for the long haul. You know, I was talking about on the last episode, this concept of psychological whiplash. And today's the perfect example of that once again. I feel like every day is kind of like that, right? You see the news about Weisselberg entering yet another guilty plea here. And then on the same day, you get another horrific Supreme Court decision. I think the blow of this Supreme Court decision landed a little lighter because, let's face it, we all knew what direction they were going to go on this issue. I remember, all the Ben and Popak and Karen hot takes on the Supreme Court as they were giving the oral arguments in this case. And we went back to our text messages to confirm. And of course, yes, Ben did get the exact decision correct in our text message the day he heard the oral arguments. He said, I see where this is going. It's likely going to be a unanimous decision. But that metadata thing, it's interesting that you brought that up. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. And we'll speak about it later. But for those wondering, literally, if you look at the PDF file that they posted of the decision, and you Control F on the computer or Apple F or Command F on a Mac, and you search the word dissent, it highlights the word concurring opinion, because they forgot to change the metadata from whatever the first draft of the opinion was. So that shows that there was a dissent at first. For whatever reason, the language was changed, but they left the old metadata within the file. So there are remnants of a almost slightly different framing of the decision in there. I'm not sure what it means exactly, but I do think it is interesting that you could kind of see the inner workings of this decision, and by this mistake of them not just simply updating the metadata or clearing the metadata. Anyway, Jordy, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm just so happy that Ben was right once again. It's this guy, man. This guy, sometimes Ben, it's a little bit annoying. You could be wrong once in a while. It's okay, big bro. It's okay. What is by the way, what does CFO stand for in the Trump organization?
Chief Financial Officer.
Officer.
I thought you were going to say Chief or Chief Fraud Officer. You could go many different ways with this, Jordy.
I like how Ben didn't realize I knew what CFO stood for. Like, he gave me a really condescending. Ben and I we're gonna
not condescending. I was worried. I'm like, no one thought Jordy what CFO stands for.
You look good though. You do look good today. You're looking a little scraggly last podcast. Got the haircut, shaved the beard. We're ready to. We're swinging today, folks.
I gotta say though, like, could we just pause for a second and acknowledge the fact that the leading candidate for the Republican Party runs a fraudulent criminal organization in which the CEO has pleaded guilt. CFO has pleaded guilty now multiple times. It just continues to lie in court. Like in any other era, this would be the biggest scandal imaginable. This would be a huge thing. But you just see time and time again, the media in just such bizarre ways covering for Donald Trump. And at sometimes, like, I'm trying to think, like, is this just like in my head? Like, am I just in it so much and I'm seeing everything? But then you actually see the data on kind of what's going on. And you're like, okay, it's not me. It literally is them. Like, they have lost their damn minds. And I would say they learned nothing from 2016, but I think it's intentional. I don't think it's that they didn't learn. I think they want to do a repeat of that. And it's unfortunate to see.
These institutions all want to gaslight us. Like, the media is its own sociopathic version of the sociopathic Supreme Court that just gaslights us. And I think when you view it through the prism of how sociopaths actually behave, and I know our viewers and listeners, unfortunately, probably know one or many sociopaths in their life, there's always some excuse or justification to justify ultimately whatever it is that they selfishly want or desire in the first place, right? So when you talk about the Supreme Court, ultimately they'll say, look, what we really care about is states' rights. That's why we're taking away women's reproductive freedom. That's why we're taking away the right of people who love each other to get married if you're part of the LGBTQ plus community. That's why we're taking away IVF. That's why we're taking away these things, because what we really care about, we care about the states, people. That's what we care about. Or they go, what we really care about? The founders, the forefathers. We're originalists. What did our founders want back in the 18th century? We don't have to worry about what's happening now. Well, let's be purists. What do the founders want? Or they're strict textualists. All of these words are beautiful. Our founders meant every single word is this magical, beautiful thing, except when they don't like the words. And they're like,
Except that one, not that one.
But there was a comma there, and this whole thing about well-regulated militias. I don't really like that word. Just the right to bear arms, just generally with everything. That's what they must have meant, even though they didn't have access to ARs and other modern weapons of war. So it's just a sociopathic, let's come up with whatever framework it is to justify it. And when it came to the 14th Amendment, Section 3, they go, you know what? The people who drafted the 14th Amendment, Section 3, what they were focused on was taking away states' rights and empowering the federal government in the post-Civil War era. So there's no way that the text of the 14th Amendment that literally talks about the disqualification of insurrectionists, there's no way they actually meant that that's something the state should do. No, what we should really focus on is not the 14th Amendment, Section 3, and the sentences that are pretty clear. Let's focus on the 14th Amendment, Section 5. Oh, you never heard us talk about the Section 5? Oh, it's Section 5 where it says, Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. So Congress, it's up to the federal government that they must pass a law in order for this to happen. That's what is required. This is not self-enforcing. It requires legislation to work. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like, that's simply not what it says. And they go, but look, we wouldn't want, this is what they say in their opinion, this kind of patchwork where different states are just disqualifying people for different reasons. Like, imagine the slippery slope that we go down. So let's say Colorado disqualifies Donald Trump here. What's stopping, say, Texas? They don't use these words specifically. They talk about this patchwork. What stops, say, Texas or Florida from trying to disqualify President Biden? And the answer is very simple. If he's not an insurrectionist, he can't be disqualified. If they disagree with his policies on the border that they want to kill anyway, despite it being bipartisan, that's not an insurrection. Stop gaslighting us. We saw what happened on January 6th, and that's what they don't want to confront. They want to talk about January 6th as like it was just something. It was just, January 6th, it's no different than policy differences. What are you talking about? That was an insurrection against our country. Don't use the word insurrection. Why? We saw what Donald Trump did up there. We're continuing to see behind the scenes with all of these messages being revealed. Like we learned about messages from Ken Chesbrough. We're learning more and more each and every day that this was not just an insurrection then, but it is an ongoing one to try to overthrow our democracy. So stop the gaslighting. But here's the thing, Brett and Jordy. I think, though, that we, the people, that we get it. We, the people, generally, not the MAGAs, but by and large, mainstream Republicans, independents, Democrats, progressive, liberals, actual conservatives, people not affiliated with political parties. We're looking at this and we're like, what? That makes no sense at all. And the same way the Supreme Court does that gaslighting, the media does the gaslighting in all of their own ways, because you'll see the speech where Donald Trump can't get through sentences. And they'll be like, the headline will be, Donald Trump powerfully deflects, goes on the offense. I'm like, are you not watching this? He's not speaking in freaking sentences. At a bare minimum, I want a person who can put a patchwork of words together and form a freaking sentence. And he's not doing that. So stop gaslighting. He deflected this powerfully. So one of their tactics, the same way the Supreme Court comes up with their framework, is for them to say, oh no, what you see didn't happen. What actually happened was this. And I'm like, that didn't happen. And the other thing that they do is they want to focus on, you don't need to actually look at the data that's happening in every special election, every referendum, every primary and actual trends where you're talking about massive amounts of data. Don't do that. Let's just run our own polls. Let's call 1,000 people with landlines. 847 people may respond. And then let's just extrapolate from that these stories. And let's just post these stories every day that are incongruent with the actual data that we all see every time there is a primary and a referendum. That's their own version of the sociopath. And I think when we all come here in this pro-democracy community like we do, one of the key things is just stop gaslighting us. We can see it. We know what's happening.
Well said. Yeah, that's a good rant. I appreciated it. No, I mean, it's absolutely true. And then by contrast, they'll cover like a Biden win where Biden wins a primary by like 96%. They'll be like, beleaguered Biden ekes out primary victory as voters turn against. I'm like, he won with 96%. What are we doing here, folks? And you know what? Like, you reminded me, Ben, this weekend of 2016 and the coverage around Hillary Clinton. And, you know, in many ways, I think it's so traumatic that a lot of us have like blacked it out. But when you go back, you see that both the media and the Republican Party are truly running the identical, and I mean identical, playbook to exactly what they did to Hillary Clinton in 2016 is what they're doing with Biden right now. I mean, and like I was saying before, is it in my head? Am I just, exaggerating here? Is this hyperbolic? Well, I found a word cloud from 2016 of the coverage of words that was used in coverage leading up to the 2016 election with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And here were the words from the word cloud, meaning these were the most used words by the mainstream media when covering these two candidates in 2016. So here you could see on the Hillary section, the biggest story, the biggest thing they covered, emails, butter emails, email far outseeds anything, right? And then when you look at the other little subheader, the slightly smaller subheaders here in the word cloud, you see other things, which are all negative. Health. If you remember, there was all these stories. Hillary, 5 weeks to live, 5 months to live. Is Hillary going to die? Hillary has a coughing fit. Hillary had to be carried into a van. Is she going to even make it to the election? Do you remember all of these stories? It was nonstop about
the cough heard round the world.
Mm-hmm. These were legitimate headlines. I think I have some of these headlines also here. Here we got CNN here. Hillary coughs and a nation listens. That's a real headline from September 2016. NBC News, Hillary Clinton fights back coughing attack. That's September 2016. And all this while Hillary Clinton was very openly warning us about the threat of a Donald Trump presidency. And I know we could all agree right now when we look at those clips of Hillary Clinton on the stump at these debates, everything she said was prescient. Everything she said really is what ended up happening. But what was the media focused on that time? They were focused on Hillary Clinton coughs and a nation listens. Let's look more at this word cloud. Let's see some of the other things they were covering about Hillary Clinton in 2016. Email, health, scandal, lie, foundation, because the Clinton Foundation, pneumonia. These are all negative things about her health or about the Clinton Foundation, which has never done anything wrong while Donald Trump was running these illegitimate or not even like allowed to run charities in the state of New York. Like, this is what the media was covering about Hillary Clinton. And you cannot help but notice the similarities between what they're doing there and what they're doing now with Biden. First, let me show you during that same time, what were they speaking about relating to Donald Trump? Where you see here, president, immigration, speech, campaign, Republican, people. Like these are much different things, I'm just going to say, to be the top stories that are covered. And we laid out this sort of GOP 2016 strategy that requires a complicit media to go along with it. And it's exactly what we're seeing right now. So you look at 2016, you had Hillary Clinton, sick, old. Is she going to die any second? These were all the stories nonstop. Now in 2024, we're seeing the same. Is Biden too old? Too old. Voters are concerned about Biden's age. 2016, you had Hillary's emails. 2024, you have the Hunter laptop, the laptop from hell, the laptop, the emails. 2016, you had the Benghazi hearings over and over. You had these BS hearings on Benghazi. In 2024, you have all these BS hearings from Republicans on Hunter Biden, on the border, on whatever the made-up crisis du jour is. And the media
James Comer report, her report.
Yeah, no,
her report, the James Comer report, identical.
Or Comey, her. Like you could make parallels between all of these things, and like the parallel, like it's literally the same thing. We're in a rerun right now of that. You know, the good thing is that we have the experience now to be able to identify what is going on.
Right.
Because when we were in it for the first time there, I think a lot of people were blindsided by it. Was like one of the first times we saw this flood of disinformation and this just abhorrent behavior from the media. But now we're 8 years later and we're far more cognizant of what is going on here. And so that's why it's up to all of us to continue to, spread the messages and to, just to be able to call it out, right? Like some of the things we're seeing are just so egregious, Ben.
It's such an excellent
James Comer.
You did, but it's okay. I rattled you in the beginning.
They may as well fuse it to one because Comey gave us Comer.
Yeah. That's why I added Comey. But they're the same. You have Comer spreading all of his BS, and it's like this, right? How often during the 2016, after 2016, with Donald Trump, would the media go? It became a joke, right? Donald Trump appears to be taking a new tone. Donald Trump, is this his shift towards being presidential? Is this the moment Donald Trump became president? We all remember all these headlines week after week after week, and just going, oh, no, he's the same guy. What are we doing here? Why are we doing these stories? And yet it's now 2024 and we're getting headlines like this from Axios. Okay. Axios says, as the former president will need support from college-educated voters, Donald Trump has recently avoided claiming that the 2020 election he lost was, quote, stolen. Instead, he says things like, we were interrupted or something bad happened. Here's the thing.
What?
Despite the framing, that's a lie. That's literally fake. That's a fake news story. And I'll show you this montage right now. These are clips from literally this weekend and over the past few weeks of Donald Trump saying that the election was rigged, obviously falsely. But how do you write that Axios story after seeing all of this?
They're looking for the people that rigged the election, and that's the people they go after. They got away with something. They're never going to get away with it again. Look what they've done to the country. Then you look at January 6th. It was a rigged election, and we're looking at it, and almost everybody in this room agree. It was a rigged election, but we won much bigger with millions and millions more votes in 2020. It was a rigged election. It was a rigged election. They go after the guys that complain about the election, not the guys that rigged the election. Isn't that interesting, right? The radical left Democrats rigged the presidential election in 2020. They rigged the presidential election. The radical left Democrats rigged the presidential election of 2020. And it was rigged, and it was stolen. And if something happened where it gets stolen, because it's the only way they're going to do it, they're professional thieves.
And just for
so
those,
many of those
clips, of you who are listening, most of those were from March 2nd, right? So in the past 48 hours, and then and the rest were from February. So we're talking about things that happened very recently. And yes, Brett.
Let's run back the headline.
And Brett, was super hard, Brett? Super hard to find those video clips?
No, they were posted we posted them. They were all posted all over the place. And let me reread the headline now after seeing that video. As the former president will need support from college-educated voters, Donald Trump has recently avoided claiming that the 2020 election he lost was stolen, instead saying we were interrupted or something very bad happened. For those watching, I'm sure you also noticed, not only was he saying the election was rigged, he handed out signs. They were holding signs on it that said the election was rigged at the rally this Saturday. I don't understand how you run that headline. I don't understand.
Well, you
how
run that,
write this.
you run that headline if you have an agenda. I mean, it is written with a way to try to manipulate people. And that is what they are doing, this legacy media. They're trying to manipulate. Like, there's Occam's razor. At some point, this is intentional conduct. It's intentional. It is malicious. And it is not what the job of the media is supposed to be. The media wants to create its own narrative when what the media should be doing is reporting on what is actually happening. And when we come back from our first quick break, I just want to share with people what is actually happening. We spend our time watching these speeches that Donald Trump gives. We spend our time comparing it and contrasting it to what President Biden is saying and doing. And when you see these headlines from the media that don't match the reality, there is a reason why people are moving away from them. And I think we, the people, what's going to set 2024 apart is that we, the people, are taking back our power. We're taking back our voice. We're not letting these gatekeepers gaslight us the way they want to and the way they did in 2016. That's why we're seeing the data when there's actual voting taking place that's different from what they are trying to tell us is going to happen. We, the people, get it. We'll talk about that and more. Let's take our first quick break of the show. Ever tried to break a bad habit and felt like you're climbing Everest in flip-flops? Yeah, we've been there too, but here's a breath of fresh air. Fume. It's not about giving up, it's about switching up. Fume takes your habit and simply makes it better, healthier, and a whole lot more enjoyable. Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavored air device that does just that. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing and anxiety while breaking your habit. The first time I tried Fume, it was way more flavorful than I thought, and it feels very fresh. The look and feel of Fume is very sleek, it's well weighted, perfectly balanced, and extremely fun to fidget with. Plus, Fume's just released a magnetic stand for your Fume, so there's no more losing it around the house. It's built with fidgeting in mind. You can spin your Fume around and around and around it. Start the year off right with the good habit by going to tryfume.com/Meidas, tryfum.com/Meidas, and getting the journey pack today. Fume is giving listeners of the show 10% off when you use our code Meidas to help make starting the good habit that much easier. Go to tryfume.com/Meidas and use our code Meidas. Most clothes are uncomfortable or too tight or never actually the size you really are, not to mention the annoyance of trying to put a good outfit together. Everyone wants to dress their best and look good at all times because, frankly, it's a confidence booster. So here's the deal. Men's closets were due for a radical reinvention, and Rhone stepped up to the challenge. Rhone's commuter collection is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible set of products known to man, and here's why. Rhone helps you get ready for any occasion with the commuter collection, which offers the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, and polos. You never have to worry about what to wear when you have the Rhone commuter collection. Rhone's comfortable four-way stretch fabric provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way, from your commute to work to your 18 holes of golf. It's time to feel confident again without the hassle. With Rhone's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the products. It's that easy. And with Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. And on top of that, Rhone is 100% machine washable, so you can ditch the dry cleaner altogether. I absolutely love Rhone. It's comfortable yet professional and has truly become my favorite clothing. We're on the move a lot, whether it's jumping from meeting to meeting or catching a flight or doing a hot take, whatever. Rhone Commuter Collection has never let me down. The versatility and overall comfort of the collection is undefeated. Even after I wear it all day, I still feel super fresh because of that Gold Fusion anti-odor technology. The Commuter Collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to rhone.com/Meidas and use that promo code Meidas to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to rhone.com/MEIDAS and use that code Meidas. It's time to find your corner office comfort.
Let's go.
Wow, thank you to our pro-democracy sponsor there, Jordy.
That's really cool.
Yeah, for the audio listeners, I'm playing with that new fume magnet. No, but seriously, like I've seen so many comments of folks who use the fume and said that they quit their bad habit to start a good habit. So definitely check that out. And the Rhone clothes are amazing. Links are in the descriptions. Click them. Let them know we sent you. We work on those discounts for you guys specifically.
Before we took that break, we were looking at some of these headlines, and we showed you the Axios headline from today that says, as the former president will need support from college-educated voters, Donald Trump has recently avoided claiming that the 2020 election he lost was stolen, and instead said, he said, quote, we were interrupted or something very bad happened. And we showed you a whole montage showing that in the past 48 hours, Donald Trump has continued to say that the 2020 election was rigged and stolen.
Axios actually got fact checked on that on Twitter. Like their tweet now has a disclaimer on it that they were spreading false information, which is pretty embarrassing for them.
But it's not just any false information, like when they try to, like when an Axios or a CNN or whoever, when they do the fact check, and like I remember when they fact checked us, it wasn't Axios, I think it was CNN, and we were saying how Marjorie Taylor Greene was not applauding for Zelensky, and it was part of our kind of the broader point that we were making, trying to raise the red flag many years ago that people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and the MAGA Republicans were not going to support our helping of our allies. That was the broader point we wanted to make. But I remember we were fact checking. They were like, well, actually, if you look at her hand, it is possible that she skimmed hands and that it's therefore a clap. And then they try to use that to undermine the work that you're doing when our point isn't even about is she clapping. It's that we were raising a red flag then that she was there trying to actually undermine Zelensky's speech at a joint session. And that's where they try to come and attack the work that we're doing. And it's like that's not a clap. And they're like, the definition of a clap could potentially mean, and the whole thing is just completely outrageous.
Ben, can I show you also on the lane of Axios? Let me show you this photo that I just found from December 2016 of the head of Axios at the Mar-a-Lago Christmas party. Oh, come down, party, Axios and Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Here's Mike Allen. Christmas at Mar-a-Lago at Real Donald Trump. Relaxed and chatty. Host the press for drinks. Off record, but picks okay. This is who's running Axios. So, I think we also need perspective on, who is behind this and what's their motivation. And oftentimes their motivation is they want access. So they don't want to be mean to Trump because Donald Trump gives them access like this party to Mar-a-Lago. They don't want to lose those invites. They don't want to lose the statements that they get from him and his people. And so they continue to do these kind of stories and do his bidding.
And they cut deals. If we post this, will you give us this information? And can we potentially do an interview? And so it's very transactional. But, the point, though, is this rises to such a degree of materiality, how egregious this is by Axios. If you're willing to say this, how do I trust anything ever that you'll ever say again? Let's say we were wrong about Marjorie Taylor Greene and that, in fact, it wasn't necessarily clapping 3 times, but she did touch her hands and a sound emanated, right? Like at some point I'd be like, okay, that happened, like whatever. But it's not like we're saying the exact opposite of what is happening. And by the way, we got that right, what is happening. But it's okay to, like, I get it. You can't be perfect. People will make mistakes. I don't think we're 100% perfect. We do our best. We try. We put in blood, sweat, and tears into getting the data and going through the court opinions. But, you know, to err is human. But to engage in headlines like this is pro-fascism. I don't know how other way to describe that. You are now an active part of aiding and abetting disinformation, no different than what you see in the propaganda networks in Russia with Vladimir Putin. You're no different. And that's what we're seeing over and over again. And by the way, this was from this past weekend also, and this is what Donald Trump does at each of his events, which I call traveling fascist circus rallies, which he just calls rallies. He starts them by playing an altered and manipulated version of the national anthem. So they've taken the national anthem, Trump and MAGA, they butchered it, and they do an anthem featuring the violent January 6th insurrectionists to start all of his speeches. And then Donald Trump says, oh, the spirit of these hostages, that's such a great song by them. You know, they're hostages, these insurrectionists. They're really hostages. And I just think to myself, what in the world? You've taken our national anthem, you've butchered it with a song by the insurrectionists. You play it and you make people pledge allegiance. And only MeidasTouch is covering that. I mean, there's some other independent media too, but like no one else is like, hello. That's why I'm feeling like, what are you doing? Like, what in the world? Here, play this clip.
They've done to people. You heard the hostages singing. That was hostages. They're the J6 hostages, I call them, because they are hostages. They're policemen, they're firemen, they're accountants. They're lawyers in some cases. They're put in jail for extended periods of time, for very long periods of time. They're hostages. You heard them singing. You heard the spirit that they had? The spirit is unbelievable. That song became the #1 song.
He does that every speech. You see the signs in the back saying that the elections are rigged while he's praising the J6 insurrectionists who he's taken our national anthem and made a J6 song with, and that's what they pledge allegiance to. It's like, what in the world are we talking about? And then as I said on a recent post, perhaps the most charitable thing that you can say about Donald Trump's speeches, and I mean this sincerely, is that occasionally he puts a few words together. And that's about it. Like, he's up there making noises, and he's up there saying things like, you know, Venezuela and, you know, Saudi Arabia and you know, have you Mr. We sing song, you know, and I'm watching this and I'm just like, he's not, what is even going on? Like, these are not even words. Let me just play for you. Brett, you did this amazing you won't even call it amazing. You've done a compilation of Donald Trump's speech from this past weekend with and Ron Filipkowski worked on this as well, and our great editorial team at MeidasTouch.com, from Trump's speech in Virginia and North Carolina. And when you watch this, you're just like, oh my God. Play this clip.
Heard that Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat. You see Maduro, Venezuela, that is no longer admired, respected, or listened to. And Putin, you know, has so little respect for Obama that he's starting to throw around the nuclear word today. You heard that, nuclear. He's starting to talk nuclear weapons today. Look, he can't campaign. He can't campaign. He can't speak. So we call it migrant crime. I came up with that name because I come up with a lot of good names. He was going to the border, doing a show, Sean Hannity, good man Sean Hannity. We'll demolish the deep state. We will expel the warmongers. Production in the United States, country, even Argentina, they went MAGA. You know Argentina, great guy. He's a big Trump guy. He loves Trump. I love him because he loves Trump. When he called, I took his call. Anybody that loves me, I like them. Biden border will. Well, you know this, right? The Biden border bill, like ding, boom. This is me. I hear, bing. You heard the hostages singing. That was the hostages. They're the J6 hostages, I call them, because they are. I'm being indicted for you. I am. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I purposely mix up like a name like Bird Brain. You know who Bird Brain is? But you know what? So you interchange them, and then they go out with stories. I cannot be sarcastic, so I tried not to be. I just did that thing for the first time in like 2 weeks because it's a disaster.
Look, we're talking about the nuclear codes. Let me be very clear. And we need to not mince our words there because, look, I can mock that and I will. I can point out how bizarre that is and I will. I can point out how unhinged it is and I will. But what we are talking about is life or death. What we are talking about, and we should not mince words, is the existence of our country and our planet. The Republican Party wants to give that person the nuclear codes. They want him to be the one. The person who goes, I come up with words, you know, Sean Hannity, you know, Argentina, whose inflation is 2,037%. They're MAGA. Saudi Arabia, Venezuela. You know, you want to give that the nuclear weapons of the United States of America. You want him to be making the decisions over life and death of a family? What the heck? What the heck is that? It is beyond me, you know. And look, to some extent too, you know, you watch that and you're like, honestly, if it wasn't someone who was just so trying to cause you pain and cause you suffering, my instinct is to feel bad when I see somebody having that situation. Like, my instinct in my heart is like, man, that's someone who's going through something right there. But that person's going to be making the decisions that could lead to killing future generations and our kids and grandkids and family and communities. Brett and Jordy.
I mean, I am at a loss for words. And there were so many moments, even just watching, you know, those short clips where I was, even as somebody who's been watching clips of him now for a long period of time and has seen him, I was shocked, you know, and stunned to see kind of his condition at this rally. Can we focus on this one moment I just want to go back to the first clip in that montage because it really threw me. Let's just play this one moment one more time.
Heard that Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat your.
Okay, what?
How are more people not speaking about this right now? And I was happy to see, you know, Morning Joe was talking about this today, which was great. And I think we need more kind of, you know, mainstream platforms like that to be speaking about these issues that we're so obviously seeing and not playing with all these polls, right? There's going to be polls that come out all the time. A poll isn't your story. Okay. Stop it. Just stop, report the facts, and the polls will change as people get the facts. But if you're making the story the poll, then you are driving the narrative in a way that I guess is designed to drive it in order to hurt whoever you want to hurt. Like these are purely kind of push polls at this point. And I'm not saying there's no relevance to polls. I'm not saying throw out all the polls and don't look at trends that you see. I'm not saying that at all. But don't let narratives be driven by polls, especially this far out from an election. You know, I think for perspective, I actually thought this was, you know, quite interesting to take a look at kind of historical polls. And when you look at like Bush Dukakis, for example, and you look at the time of the convention in August or July, Dukakis in the polls was up 17% as he came out of the Democratic convention in July, up 17%. Okay. And that was in August. Can you imagine the panic if Joe Biden in August came through an average of the polls down 17%. And that was August after the Democratic convention. Of course, as we all know, there was no President Dukakis, and George H.W. Bush won by quite a commanding victory. He had 53.4% of the vote, which translated to 426 electoral votes. It was a complete wipeout that year. But a few months before, guess what the polls were? The polls were Dukakis up by 17 points. So could we stop putting stock in these polls, especially in March before the election? That's my message right now that I want to get out there.
It's a good message, B. And I just think in general, too, you look at a lot of these legacy media companies, and I hate harping on it, but it's so true. It just feels like they're just feeding this ecosystem of entertainment, where it's like, what headline can I put out there, or what BS poll can I put out there to get the clicks? And it's long stopped, you know, are the days of Walter Cronkite coming on TV and delivering the news that like, this is the facts, y'all. No. Depending on what you're watching, what algorithm you're being fed, I mean, the legacy media is just crushing you with misinformation and disinformation left and right, because they're all vying for clicks that probably equate to money and dollars and cents for them. They don't care about the actual information, because in their misguided approach, they've now stopped to realize that, like, what makes the MeidasTouch community so great and the Meidas Mighty, and why this network continues to grow, is that we don't gaslight our audience. We just bring the facts and the data, and we let the audience make the interpretations for themselves. For whatever reason, legacy media has forgotten this notion of let's educate the audience and let them, you know, on their own power, come to the conclusions of what they need to, you know, think and do. No, they're trying to spoon feed BS information left and right to keep the eyeballs on the channel. But they're wrong in that thought. That's why people are clicking away from the TV stations and the legacy media and coming here. Subscribe right now to the MeidasTouch Network. Let's go.
Look, I am biased. I just want to confess. I'm biased. And let me confess to you my bias. I am biased in favor of our democracy. So first and foremost, my framework is always going to be towards democracy first and foremost, beyond any political allegiance, beyond any political party. Where I see a political party also aligned with that framework, I will tend to be more aligned there, because my framework is a bias in favor of democracy over authoritarianism. My bias is also in favor of the facts and what the data is actually showing. And like a laser, I want to find that. And Brett, that's why when I watched the Supreme Court reach the issue on the 14th Amendment, Section 3, what I was observing, and I could have been like, whoa, we think that the 14th Amendment, Section 3 is going to prevail. I started texting immediately. I think I texted you. I said, it's going to be 9-0. I think I wrote, maybe 8-1.
I got it. What's funny is whoever has sent us this screenshot has your name spelled wrong on their phone, which is also quite funny.
It's salty. It's salty.
Salty. Gotta fix that, man. Do you think all of our names are
salty? Just it's spelled the same way MeidasTouch is spelled.
Yeah. There's a reason MeidasTouch comes from our last name, Salty. You produce all. You know this by now, Salty. Salty's our producer. For those who don't know.
Here's the thing. Because of my bias in searching for the facts, we were talking about the Clinton Foundation, Brett, and that was a major issue with Hillary Clinton. Foundation was one of the big words there. Notice on Donald Trump's word, there mention of like bankruptcy, because he bankrupted all of these companies. There's no word of sexual assault. There's no words of all of these things that should be on his word tree. But if you told me that the CFO of the Clinton Foundation was headed back to prison for committing perjury after lying at a trial that cost the Clinton Foundation $1 billion, that would rightfully and should be a front page story everywhere, frankly, for weeks. For weeks. When has that ever happened? Did Obama ever have a CFO? Did George Bush? Did Jimmy Carter? Did Ronald Reagan? Do any of these people have CFOs who are inextricably intertwined within their affairs, who were found guilty of felonies over and over and over again? And this is why I love, I love this guy. I love this account, Black Knight 10K. And here's what he wrote. If there were such a thing as the Biden org, and the CFO went to prison for fraud and then was headed back to prison for committing perjury after lying at a trial that cost Biden $500 million, the internet would explode. But because it's the Trump org, it's just another Monday. But here's the thing, though, where I perhaps slightly disagree with the framing, though, but respectfully, because I do think that we, the people, get it. I think the issue is that the mainstream media, legacy media, whatever you want to call it, they would explode. There would be op-eds every day from everybody, liberal writers, conservative writers, independent writers, everybody saying that Biden should drop out, that this, by the way, maybe from me. I'd want to know the full facts in my hypothetical, but I'd probably be like, whoa. So you're telling me, because when I heard, I'll be blunt, and I've said, you've heard me say it on other episodes, when there were the 17 audio recordings, right? Remember when the MAGA Republicans said, we've got 17 audio recordings.
Yeah, what happened to those 17?
That show that Biden was involved. And then they go, oh, we made that up. And then they talk about the whistleblower, and one's a spy for China, the other's a spy for Russia, or is an agent of Russia. And these things don't exist. Yet you have all of the headlines act like they do exist. And this is where I'm watching this feeling so gaslit. I'm like, the New York Post is running with a story that says Joe Bribin, they wrote. And all the legacy media is running it as well, not just the Murdoch properties, over and over again. Bribe this, bribe that, bribe that. And it comes from somebody who admits that they were lying. Like this person, Alexander Smirnov, okay? He has said that he made this stuff up. He's admitted that he's been doing the lying. He is literally an agent for Vladimir Putin. And when you go through the reports by his own statements, like actual audio recordings, Smirnov talks about trying to get compromat on American politicians, talks about working with high-level Russian agents. And even today, James Comer says that he thinks that the guy who's saying he's lying and is the Russian agent is believable, and that we should trust the Russian. That's where they've netted out. Where the MAGA Republicans have netted out on all of this is actually the whistleblower, who we now know is undisputedly, in the fake whistleblower's own words, who's not a whistleblower, but who's a Russian operative, that this operative actually is a very credible source of info. That's where they're going with after the Hunter Depot, which was an absolute disaster for MAGA Republicans. And I see why they don't want to do it in public, because they kept on attacking Hunter about his addiction when millions of Americans are in recovery from addiction. And I bet you they don't schedule that hearing in public because they're a bunch of freaking cowards. Here, play this clip of James Comer.
Last week. A week ago, I sent a subpoena to the FBI for a form that a whistleblower has alleged is in the FBI's possession. We hope the FBI will be transparent and forthcoming and provide the Oversight Committee with the 1023 form we have subpoenaed. If they do, the committee will assess the form it has subpoenaed from the FBI, and has been my practice. We will report to you only facts when they are verified and indisputable. This committee will not pursue witch hunts or string the American people along for years with false promises of evidence that is beyond circumstantial evidence, as Representative Adam Schiff and the Democrats did for years. I trust the whistleblower.
I trust the whistleblower. Just a correction. That was from last May, that event. I trust the whistleblower, though. They go, I trust you trust the whistleblower. It is true, though, that their position was, and it wasn't in that clip, that they're now basically saying, well, it's the FBI's fault that they're the ones who are involved in this, while the FBI was saying, all we do in these 1023 forms is we take the information and we just take the data. That's basically all we do. Mm-hmm. And you should not rely on it. But now they go and they attack the FBI.
Yeah, they told them not to rely on it. They told them that this is literally just raw data that like anybody can submit. And the Republicans grilled them for days in Congress. They held hearings and they said, what are you trying to hide from the American people? What do you hide? They yelled at him. They yelled at the FBI over this. They yelled at Christopher Wray. They accused him of being like a secret Democrat when he was appointed by Donald Trump and has been a Republican his entire life. And so they bully them. They decide that they're going to use this form with unverified information. And then, hey, it's all proven to be BS. And the person admits that it's BS and it actually came directly from Russia, straight from the Kremlin. And they go, oh, well, the FBI shouldn't have let us do that. You demanded that they let you do that. That was your doing. Like, there's no good faith. And the issue is you have, on one side, you have the coverage that we've seen from folks like Axios and the New York Times that every day makes you want to just pull your hair out and go, what the heck is going on? And from the other side, it's just pure unadulterated propaganda, just vicious, ugly, disgusting propaganda, like Ben was saying with the New York Post. And like I mentioned earlier, and I pulled up a photo of it. This was a National Enquirer front page headline on the National Enquirer. And I know, yes, it's a tabloid, but guess what? A lot of people see these tabloids. They're in supermarkets. They're right there at every aisle. A lot of people read these things. And so you had a pro-Trump person running the National Enquirer who, while the word cloud of media was covering all the things about Hillary's health, Hillary's age, Hillary scandal, Hillary emails, Hillary Foundation, all of that stuff, you had the National Enquirer and right-wing rags running headlines like this: Hillary, 6 months to live, brain cancer and blood clots, MS, strokes, and alcohol abuse. Bill forces her to stay on the campaign trail. I mean, this is sick stuff. This is sick stuff. And there are real people on the end of this. And stuff like this swayed the election and led to millions and millions of deaths. So I refuse to say that this is just, oh, well, they're a tabloid, let bygones be bygones. This is vicious, disgusting stuff. And nobody ever is held accountable for these disgraceful lies.
When we come back, I do want to talk about how an actual CFO for a presidential candidate, though, just pled guilty to perjury today. And already the media's off of that story. Like, don't really care about that. Not a big deal that the individual who was previously found liable for, or previously was convicted of felony tax fraud and served time in jail in connection with his role for the organization led by the leader of the Republican Party, is now pleading guilty to yet another felony, which, by the way, Justice Arthur Engoron, the judge presiding over the case, requested that Weisselberg's lawyer, Alina Habba, let him know back in early February if she was aware. And she goes, I'm not aware of anything, and I don't need to tell you anything, which seems to run afoul in my opinion.
We have to discuss this Alina Habba element, because
I will
the comment that she said
Habba
to the judge about Weisselberg when Judge Engoron caught wind that Weisselberg may be cutting this plea deal as he was going to make his decision. I need to hear your thoughts on what it means for Alina Habba and her career, and even her ability to even practice law. There's a lot of implications here. We got to get into it.
Yeah, we'll find out about that and more right after our last quick break of the show. I like to cook. It's a great way to unwind after a long day, but going food shopping and getting all of the ingredients can be super time consuming. So I found a better way with Marley Spoon. This podcast is sponsored by Marley Spoon. Marley Spoon knows bland food is boring, so they created the best tasting meal kit money can buy. With our code Meidas, you can get up to 25 free meals. With Marley Spoon, you can choose from over 100 delicious recipes every week, from Cajun spice chicken to poached salmon to butternut squash gnocchi to a vegan burrito bowl. My favorite recent meal from Marley Spoon is that Cajun spice chicken. It is delicious, and many of the recipes are completely customizable, whether you're looking for vegetarian meals, family-friendly dishes, or low-carb options. Marley Spoon has the food that you want to eat. Marley Spoon even has an in-house registered dietitian who actually assesses every recipe, so it takes the guesswork out of eating healthy. There's something really rewarding about cooking food yourself and it tasting amazing versus doing expensive, unhealthy takeout. Marley Spoon also saves you from making that extra grocery haul with their online market of pantry essentials. You can shop their selection of 125 plus items like seasonal produce, ready-to-heat options, meal shortcuts, extra proteins, and handy snacks, and easily add them to the My Next Marley Spoon box. With meal planning and food shopping taken care of, making delicious food at home has finally become effortless. Plus, with Marley Spoon, you aren't locked in long term. Marley Spoon's flexible subscription allows you to edit, pause, or cancel your boxes anytime. So, experience the most personalized meal kit with Marley Spoon. Head to marleyspoon.com/offer/Meidas and use our code Meidas for up to 25 free meals. That's right, up to 25 free meals with Marley Spoon. One last time, that's Marley Spoon, MarleySpoon.com/offer/Meidas, MEIDAS, for up to 25 free meals. And make sure you use our promo code Meidas so they know that I sent you. I know from a lot of the emails that you send me that a lot of you watching and listening are entrepreneurs. You run your own business, and you know I run a business too, the MeidasTouch Network. So I know how hard it is to manage your numbers, manage the trends in the market, and budget everything. Your business gets to a certain size and the cracks start to emerge. Things you used to do in a day are now taking a week. You have too many manual processes and you don't have one source of truth. If this is you, you need to know these three numbers: 37,000, 25, and 1. Okay, 37,000. That's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. And 1, because your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all of your key performance indicators, KPIs, in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risks, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need to grow all in one place. The power of having all the information in one place to make better decisions and the unprecedented offer NetSuite is providing has been a game changer for us here at MeidasTouch, and I think it will also be a major game changer for you and your business. Right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance absolutely free at netsuite.com/Meidas. That's netsuite.com/Meidas, netsuite.com/Meidas to get your own KPI checklist. That's netsuite.com/Meidas. Check it out. You know, one of the things I noticed, well, first off, shout out to our pro-democracy sponsor,
Marley Spoon? Are you kidding me? Up to 25 free meals with Marley Spoon? Let's go. And
legitimately, sometimes I'm like, how could you even give that much stuff away? But I'm like, if you don't, it's almost like if you don't get the deal, then like, what are you doing?
What are you doing? Use our code. It's and the links right in the description. Click that NetSuite link too, especially check out that KPI. That is some awesome stuff right there. It's like a cheat sheet. It's amazing.
Yeah, the discount codes are in the description below. You know, one of the things I noticed too, Brett, because, you know, look, Donald Trump, the RNC are having massive trouble when it comes to funds. And so one of the ways they try to compensate that, you know, we saw it last week and we saw it even like it was seeing it, you know, today as well. All of the right-wing media tries to just consistently basically platform him and give him basically the equivalent of free commercials all the time. And even when they give him the platform and the biggest softball questions, like when Laura Ingraham interviews him and basically, she'll ask him, so you are so funny. Do you think that your humor and just how funny you are is going to be important? Like, they ask questions like that. And he manages to respond to that, and basically say, but did I tell you about the hostages from the J6? Like, even when they give him the softballs that they're all trying to do, he ends up responding that way. Anyway, I wanted to comment on that. But let's talk about this post right here that we talked about, though. It says, if there were such a thing as the Biden org, the CFO went to prison for fraud and then was headed back to prison for committing perjury after lying at a trial that cost Biden $500 million, the internet would explode. But because it's the Trump org, it's just another Monday. As we talked about before the break, Allen Weisselberg previously served time at Rikers Island for committing felonies in connection with his work at the Trump organization. Tax fraud was what he was ultimately charged with. The Trump organization was then charged and convicted of over a dozen felonies as well. And here we are again. Allen Weisselberg is pleading guilty to testifying falsely in the New York Attorney General civil fraud lawsuit that resulted now with pre and post judgment interest of $464 million. Donald Trump has not posted the bond there yet. He asked the appellate division for a break. Hey, want to negotiate this, appellate division? Maybe I give you $100 million and not 464. And they basically said, yeah, that's not how it works. You need to post the bond. And I thought Alina Habba said that Donald Trump was just so rich. If he's a billionaire, he's got the cash. But then Donald Trump filed a document in court saying that this is an exigent circumstance where he doesn't have the assets and he would need to sell properties in order to be able to post the bond. So, once again, Trump lying, Trump's people lying, and other than MeidasTouch and a handful of networks, the media not giving a crap. But again, I know that we, the people, give a crap. And I would say far more than just giving a crap. We know our democracy is on the line, and we know that truth is golden and how important it is that we are accurate with all of these facts and data. But speaking of Alina Habba, you'll recall that in early February, I believe it was February 1st, where the New York Times first reported about the possibility that Allen Weisselberg was involved in these plea negotiations for committing perjury. So then Justice Arthur Engoron, the judge presiding over the New York Attorney General civil fraud case, sent a letter to Alina Habba and all of the lawyers on the case and Trump's other lawyers basically saying, look, I'll paraphrase what's in the email from Engoron. This article came out from the New York Times. It says that Weisselberg is currently in plea negotiations. As the presiding judge of this case, I find it to be a very serious thing that my courtroom could have become a crime scene. So please tell me as soon as possible what you know about this as the lawyers for Allen Weisselberg, to which Alina Habba responded. This was her response to Engoron. She goes, Dear Justice Engoron, this letter is submitted in response to the email, the one that I just paraphrased from Justice Engoron. Alina Habba says, as your honor is aware, my office represents Mr. Weisselberg in the instant civil litigation. We do not represent him in connection with any criminal matters. I have not spoken with the New York District Attorney's Office about any of the matters discussed in the New York Times article. Further, in an abundance of caution, I have conferred with my ethics counsel and have been advised that I am constrained by my professional ethical obligations from providing any further detail. No adverse inference should be drawn from my inability to respond. As for how your honor should address this matter, no further action is necessary or appropriate. Matters outside the record, such as outside media sources, cannot influence the court's perception of this case or taint its view as to whether Mr. Weisselberg is a credible witness. And then there's another letter from Cliff Robert, Donald Trump's lawyer, who basically accuses Allen Weisselberg in this letter of acting inappropriately and demonstrating that he is biased against Donald Trump for even raising this issue in the first place. So their response to Justice Arthur Engoron's letter saying what's going on here was to attack Engoron and say that this showed his bias when Engoron simply wanted to determine whether or not there was a crime taking place in his courtroom. It should be noted that under New York's rules of professional responsibility, specifically Rule 3.3a sub 3, that a lawyer is under an obligation if they have actual knowledge that perjury has been committed during the course and scope of their representation, that they need to bring that to the court's attention. So what Alina Habba believes her ethical responsibilities are in keeping the perjury confidential, I believe that's what she's saying, is actually the opposite of what her ethical responsibility is under New York Rule 3.3 sub A sub 3, where she's required to inform the court of perjury. Actual knowledge may be inferred from the circumstances. Thereby, when Justice Engoron put the parties on notice that there was potential perjury taking place based on the New York Times article, in my view, in my opinion, that put Alina Habba, Cliff Robert, and others on what's called inquiry notice, at the very least then, but probably much earlier, to look into the facts and determine if they were potentially suborning perjury by putting forward a witness who was lying, and then not telling the court when they were aware of the lie, that a lie took place, as is their ethical responsibility under Rule 3.3A3. I will state this is now my opinion that it is a violation of Rule 3.3A3. We'll see what Justice Arthur Engoron does, but this is a very serious matter. And you think about it, Engoron had to issue a full opinion, right? 90 plus pages. Ultimately, it was a very severe ruling against Donald Trump, with post and pre-judgment interest now totaling $464 million. But as I noted before, in addition to that ruling, Donald Trump appealed to the appellate division. What if by the way, even though the appellate division rejected Donald Trump's request to avoid posting the bond, they did say that Donald Trump could serve still during this period of the stay. And then there'll be a hearing coming up in a few weeks on that. But just for the next few weeks, while Donald Trump could come up with a bond, that Trump could remain as an officer of New York corporations and can take out a loan with a New York bank. But just think that if that information, don't you think that's the type of material information that the New York Attorney General's office would have told the appellate division, that the CFO of the Trump organization, the critical witness in the case, the critical witness, committed perjury during the case, the one who Donald Trump pointed to as knowing about generally accepted accounting principles, is a perjurer in this specific case? That could have led to more serious remedies, more severe consequences, more severe penalties. And I think Justice Arthur Engoron is indeed going to do something about that now that Weisselberg has pled guilty to these 2 felony counts of perjury in this case in connection with his testimony there. And let me just show you this, because again, I want to show you the data, right? You've got Jerry Maguire, show me the money. I'm talking about show me the data. Here's what Allen Weisselberg said in his deposition. Now, mind you, this is supposed to be the chief financial officer of a sophisticated, which it isn't, but this is what it's supposed to be. If you take Trump's word and Eric's word and Don Jr., this is one of the top real estate companies, not the top, it is the top, what they would say, real estate company in the world, they would say. And no one does it better than them. And this is who their chief financial officer is. Here, play the deposition.
If I said the phrase GAP, G-A-A-P, are you familiar with that acronym?
I've heard of that, yes.
Okay. Tell me everything you know about GAP. What is GAP?
Generally accepted accounting principles. I don't know what's in GAP. I never took the CPA exam.
Okay.
And never studied for it. So I don't know all the various components of what GAP is.
Are there any components you know about what GAP is?
Not really.
Okay.
No.
Okay, well, you committed perjury in connection with other testimony. But here's the thing, too. Trump claims that he relied on Weisselberg, right? Who's now a perjurer. Here's what Trump said in his deposition.
To meet your obligation here of presenting the information in accordance with GAAP, was Allen Weisselberg responsible for that?
Object to the form.
I would say yes.
I would say yes. I would say that this is not how any sophisticated business operates. Your chief financial officer would almost always be a CPA. They would know at a bare minimum what people who take a first-year business course knows about, which is what generally accepted accounting principles. And you would know if that's a specific covenant in your loan documents that you have to report pursuant to what the underlying covenant is. Do want to mention briefly as well, though, just very briefly, that as I mentioned at the outset, that Nikki Haley did indeed beat Donald Trump in the Republican primary. I think that is important because it was a closed primary as well. You know, Donald Trump has said all of these things about how moderate Republicans are no longer welcome in the GOP, but time and time again, you know, and Donald Trump says that the GOP is now 100% MAGA. Again, maybe the media wants to run with that, but that's not what the actual data is showing here. Play this clip if we can, Brett, of Trump saying that moderate Republicans are no longer welcome in the GOP. We are 100% MAGA.
And they say, always trying to demean, well, MAGA really represents 48% of the Republican Party. No, it represents 96% and maybe 100%. We're getting rid of the Romneys of the world. We want to get Romneys and those out.
Okay, we want to get Romney and those out. You're talking about what? Moderate Republicans, mainstream conservatives. And again, when we see the actual data, and we'll see what happens with the data on Super Tuesday, but all of the data pretty much has been showing that there is a significant material portion of the Republican Party that will never vote for Donald Trump because of his behavior just like that. And the media doesn't accurately report on the true trends that are taking place. We covered a lot, Brett, though. Anything else you wanted to cover there, B?
No, you know, I just think, you know, it's more important than ever. We're facing a deluge of lies every single day. I've never seen anything like this in my life, and it's not going to get better anytime soon, especially with AI and all the things that the Trump campaign is doing with AI. I'm sure you saw some of the stories today about how the Trump campaign is creating these fake AI images of him with Black Americans and is distributing those to Black communities in the United States to try to act like Donald Trump is accepted by these communities. There is so much disinformation. There is so much lying on a daily basis. And that's why it's more important than ever that you throw up your own defenses. And when you see something that seems to not quite jive with the way you've seen reality and what the data is, the way that the data has been presented to you and that the data that you've seen, you should take that extra second and you should be like, wait a second, something seems a little fishy about that. Wait a second. Donald Trump says 86% of people think that the election was stolen. I'm going to call BS on that, okay? I'm going to call BS. Wait, what's this story? The Hillary Clinton crime family, the Wiz, whatever. Let me pull back for a second and see what's actually going on here. So my message is remain vigilant. And then my message is also is that, you know, when we do this show, we are not doing this for a Democratic audience or a liberal audience or a conservative audience or whatever, right? We want to speak to that growing pro-democracy, pro-normal coalition that's out there. And we believe, and I think the data shows that that is the majority of Americans. Now, a lot of these people may not currently be super hyper-focused on the elections because life gets in the way, right? You got things to do in your life. And I get that 100%. But I think it's on all of us right now to continue to grow this pro-democracy, pro-normal coalition, because there are more of us than there are of these extreme MAGAs out there. And, you know, you don't even have to listen to me, right? Listen to what Donald Trump just said. He said that if you're watching this right now and you consider yourself a Republican, but not a MAGA Republican, or you consider yourself an independent who has sometimes voted with Republicans, sometimes voted with Democrats, you know, you decide on an issue by issue basis. He told you that you're not welcome in his party. He's kicked you out. Okay. Like he said, nope, sorry, you're not welcome here. So you should take him seriously when he says that, and you should vote accordingly. If he does not want you, you should be working with the pro-democracy coalition to usher in normalcy and put an end to the madness that we are seeing every single day.
I want to give a shout out to some of the new channels that we are involved in and some of the new partnerships that we're involved in. You all know Tennessee Brando, who you probably have seen a lot of his videos, but now officially partnered with Tennessee Brando on his YouTube channel. We're trying to help Tennessee Brando get that YouTube channel to 100,000 subscribers. So after this, just search on YouTube Tennessee Brando. And I think, we want to get different perspectives from across the country. So Tennessee Brando's perspective is one that we've loved. We've officially partnered with his YouTube channel, and we're trying to help get those numbers up there as well. So make sure you subscribe there. Let's try to get 100,000 subs on Brando's channel. So search Tennessee Brando. We've heard a lot of comments. You guys need to do a better job engaging with Gen Z. I've heard that a lot. We've heard you loud and clear. We are now officially partnered with Adam Mockler and Mockler's YouTube channel. So what you can do now as well, in addition to searching Tennessee Brando, search Adam Mockler on YouTube, subscribe to his channel, tell him and Tennessee Brando that MeidasTouch sent you. Welcome them to the Meidas Mighty family officially. And we're going to continue to grow our content creators and our partnerships like this across YouTube. You know that we're also partnered with the Talking Feds YouTube channel. We've worked a lot with Harry Littman and continue to work with Harry as well. And you probably all know Tennessee Brando. He does the outro song every time we do one of these shows. And so after we sign off here, you'll hear Tennessee Brando, and he does some singing on his channel. It's really cool. So subscribe to Tennessee Brando, Adam Mockler, and you can also subscribe to Talking Feds, all now official partners of the MeidasTouch Network as we continue to grow. Thank you all so much for watching this. We're going to keep growing this pro-democracy community together. Let's get our channel here, our home here, your home here, Meidas Mighty. Let's keep growing it to 3 million. Thank you so much. Keep spreading the word. Keep sharing the videos. We're in this together. We love you. We're grateful for you. Jordy, take it away.
Shout out to the Meidas Mighty!
The Meidas Mighty standing strong against the fascists. We sing our song.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.